Hey guys, thanks a lot for clicking on the video. Today we're going to take a look at 10 of the hardest NES bosses. Not necessarily all final bosses, but definitely tough guys that will give you a challenge. Starting off the list, number 10 is Machine Gun Willie from Double Dragon. Now, he's not the toughest boss on this list, but definitely one of the cheaper bosses. The window to attack him without taking any lethal damage is a joke. Not to mention the gauntlet of tough enemies you have to beat just to get him to come out of the door. Now obviously there is a huge exploit that you can use to get him. If you elbow him right as he exits the door and then stand on just the right line on the carpet and continue to back elbow him, his bullets won't hit you. But definitely somebody that belongs on this list, especially if you don't know what you're doing the first time you meet him. Number 9, the Yellow Devil, Mega Man. Now this is a tough boss fight, and I'm sure the first person that discovered this cheat to beat him must have been pausing the game to wipe sweat and fear off of their hands and face when they realized that he was taking additional damage each time it was paused. But fighting the yellow demon straight up is still a very difficult battle. You need to continually dodge all of his parts as they go back and forth between the screen, as well as hitting just the right spot on his eye with your Thunderbolt at the right time when it appears. A brutal boss, but he lost some of his mystique with this well-known pause method. Number 8, the Great Puma from Pro Wrestling. Now, the Great Puma, I am going to consider him as a final boss. He is without a doubt the toughest match you're going to have in pro wrestling. He has incredibly fast reflexes, speed, and he can use any and every special move and finisher in the game. I don't even think he can be legitimately pinned. I suggest using a controller with some turbo if you want to stand any chance fighting him. With the nickname of The Perfect Wrestler, you really need to bring your A game if you want to win the VWF Championship. Number 7, Shadow Link from Zelda 2, The Adventures of Link. Alright, yes, there is another glitch that makes this an easy fight, called the corner trick. With it, some could even say that he's one of the easier NES bosses on this list. But honestly, think back to the 80s when no one knew about this. Imagine the amount of pain he dished out. Shadow Link can mirror all of your moves. He's better than you and he knows it. Most players did not stand a chance. Number 6, Judge Doom, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Now, we're only at number 6, and honestly, there's a fair argument to change any of these placements around. In fact, I hope you do tell me who you think are the hardest bosses on the NES down in the comments. Now, I hope you perfected your hopping charge punch, because you're gonna need it. A final boss fight that feels like it takes forever and punishes your thumbs trying to drain Doom's health meter. When you finally think you have the upper hand and it's over, you need to be quick on the draw to switch to the tap and release that dip. Number 5, the Joker, Batman. One of the hardest boss fights I've ever had, and I've never beaten him without emulation or save states. I'm not afraid to admit it. It's pretty crazy that there's players out there doing it on original NES hardware and they're beating him with no hits. Now, between his gun and his lightning bolts, there's never really any safe spots to fight back. All you can do is be stocked up on items and pray. Of course, Batman can beat anyone with enough prep time, right? Number 4, the Technodrome, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now, usually I can look back fondly on older video games and proudly state that, you know what, I could beat that game when I was 8 or 9, but I can't beat it as an adult. Well, this is not one of those games. I couldn't beat this as a kid, and I can barely find the Technodrome, let alone destroy it as an adult. Even getting to this boss battle with 2 or 3 turtles intact is something. Find the right sewer to get a respawning pizza and make sure you're 100% before you take this challenge on. Having some scroll weapons or ninja stars can't hurt either. Number 3, coming from one of, if not my favorite NES franchises, definitely top 5 in soundtrack, Dracula, Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse. Now, Dracula is one of those boss fights that when you finally figure out how to beat him, and you actually do beat him, you quickly realize that there's another form. 3 of them altogether, in fact. Not to mention that Dracula's boss battle has some of the tightest save zones in any NES game. You have to get used to beating up Dracula with his fire tubes, then you have to pass the vomiting head monstrosity, followed by the gigantic platform flying around Dracula gargoyle that you have to beat. One of the toughest and also one of the most creative and fun final boss battles. Number 2, Mike Tyson, or Mr. Dream, from Punch-Out! Another really tough quote-unquote boss battle. If you've played through this game and finally made it to Tyson, you might have your mojo going, or you might be pretty fatigued. For most players, you'll have to get used to punching in the 007-373-5963 for practice. There are a few tricks to help you against Tyson, mainly taking him to the later rounds for a TKO. You need to get into the second and third round. Sometimes just making it to the second round is an accomplishment in itself. Learn his punches, his patterns, get fast at dodging, and build up your stars. Watch for that wink. Coming in at number 1, Jaquio, I think that's how you pronounce it, from Ninja Gaiden. Now, aside from the difficulty of trying to figure out how to actually pronounce his name, Jaquio is another multi-tier boss battle where you need to have all your ninja skills on point and have your timing down to practically perfect. Scoring a few hits when you really should be retreating is pretty tricky. The worst part on top of all of this is, if you die, you have to start over from the beginning of the level. Well, that's going to do it for my list of 10 of the hardest NES bosses. Now, of course, if I wanted to make this a little longer, I would have did a few honorable mentions. I know there's a few tricky bosses in Bucky O'Hare. I know that the computer alien final boss in Fester's Quest is pretty tricky, but in all fairness, I've never actually played those games far enough to make it to those bosses. So, thank you so much for watching, guys. Of course, I'd love for you to like this video, and if you're new to the channel, think about subscribing. Also, down in the comments, guys, what are some of the hardest NES bosses that you've beaten, or what do you think should have been on this list? I'd love to hear from you. Again, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in about a week. Take care.